So let's look at some models of reflective practice. We'll introduce some different models in this lecture. We'll look at the models in more detail later. First of all, we can consider Dewey's model of reflective practice. He saw reflective practice as something which is very dynamic and quite spontaneous and requires a lot of honesty from the teacher. He said that reflective practice actually should lead to action. It is not something just to think about, it is an important thing to lead for the teacher to do. Dewey's model is based on a fundamental difference between the sort of traditional approach to teaching, which is about instruction and imitation, and really said that the teacher, in terms of reflective action, needs to confront perhaps some presumptions or prejudices about teaching. Reflective action, therefore, is very spontaneous. It's persistent, or should be persistent, very active, and needs to be carefully engaged with by the teacher. And this, therefore, becomes a focus for the teacher in terms of how they go about teaching. It affects teaching fundamentally. And he saw reflective action as more than just thought. It's got a wider dimension to it. And indeed, he actually said that reflective practice can have emotional aspects for the teacher as well. And what this actually means is that the process of reflective practice is a very complex thing to do, not straightforward, and shouldn't be entered into lightly or superficially by the teacher. It includes a good level of rationality, or in other words, a lot of clarity of thought by the teacher about the reflection process as well as the teaching that they're doing. And interestingly, as I said, this does actually draw links not just with the cognitive aspect of teaching, but the way the teacher is responding to what is happening in the classroom, the emotions which are being created in their interactions with students. So let's look at the model, the 5-stage model. First of all, he says that what the teacher does is to identify a problem, something which is vexing, is perplexing to them, which needs to be fixed. And from then, the next step is to observe and to try to clarify the understanding about the model. Beyond that, the third step of the five-stage model is for the teacher to develop a hypothesis to explain the problem, to try and understand it from a technical point of view. And this must lead into deeper scrutiny of that problem, a deeper understanding, before leading into some sort of action. So we see that Dewey placed a great deal of emphasis on this reflective thought process, which is why he was saying that it's not natural to do, it is something which has to be learned and has to be based in experience. He believed that reflective thought began with ourselves and needs to move beyond that through the reflective process. From this experience, we actually start to ask questions. For example, in terms of the problem stage, the question is, well, what's going on here? What's the problem? What's happening? And in terms of conceptualizing the problem, we might say, well, how do I fix this? What might I do to put it right? And that leads into experimentation about solving the problem. And finally, in terms of solving the problem, we are exploring the avenues that we can take to do that. So within the professional development, there is an interest in this model because it fits into the cycle of teaching and learning. it is very much developmental and is grounded in the experience of the teacher, not focused so much on theoretical applications. And interestingly, what Dewey said is that although it's a cycle, it should really be viewed as a spiral, one cycle leading into another cycle, being connected by experience. And it's this spiral which actually leads to the reflective aspect of the process. And we can see this in a model. We can see here that the cycle of reflection and thinking about action and then experimenting the action itself through experience goes into another cycle, thus creating a spiral.